Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of Rimworld Odyssey with our spacefaring Stars of Som. Last time we left off, after using a gravcore to improve and expand our gravship immensely, we were briefly slowed down by 2 mech clusters, but eventually, for the very first time in this series, we set out to launch into orbit and docked at an asteroid in space. Here we mined precious uranium and vacstone, which we used to build 2 large thrusters. However, in order to properly install them, they are currently still stored in our hospital, we should probably leave orbit behind for the time being. As you can see, we don't have a whole lot of chem fuel left, so our gravship's range is somewhat limited. As always, I find myself intrigued by landmarks, but the 2 here are in the shrublands and the desert, and with a bunch of hungry animals on board, I'm looking for something a bit more fertile. So, a patch of grassland with a river and large hills it is. Maybe we even find some plasteel here. We desperately need it. So here we are, ready to lead our flock of animals out to graze. As you can see, malnutrition is becoming a slight issue for some of them, and maybe you have also noticed it already. The map is currently under the effects of a grey pall. Light levels will thankfully not be affected by this, but colonists venturing outside the gravship of course will. Now, our goal for this brief layover here is purely to refuel and gather food. As usual, we will likely not stay much longer than 1 rice growth cycle, and a potential next travel destination is presented to us in this quest here. A nearby settlement is ordering 6 dusters and is willing to pay well for them. The only issue is the game's definition of nearby, since the settlement is essentially located on the other side of the planet. And even with our shiny new thrusters, I'm not even sure we'll be able to travel there in time, not to mention that the cost for chem fuel for the entire trip will most likely far exceed anything we earn from it. And so we do not queue up the production of new dusters anytime soon. Instead, we start working on the basics, food and steel, and also a new research project. I think it's time for bionics. One of our main limiting factors at the moment is unfortunately plasteel. I'm still hoping that we find some naturally occurring on one of the next maps we travel to. If we don't, then maybe we need to force some trading, or we go scanning for it, which might however take some time. For the time being, then, we get our new thrusters installed. Our gravship supports up to 6 of these large thrusters, which can be used in combination with up to 4 small ones, for a maximum of up to 136 tiles of range. For now, with these 6 thrusters here in total, we only sit at 56 tiles, but as you can see, that still covers a respectable area. And, well, we have the materials for it, so let's construct 2 more. Installing them will require a few rearrangements inside of our workshop area. While we take care of those, you can also see that the grey pall is lifting. And eventually, young Furion installs large thruster number 4. Now our range already sits at 104 tiles. I believe it was a bit too small earlier because one of the large thrusters was blocked by a rock. While we then wait for the rice to be ready for the harvest, we can focus on gathering meat. The numbers of wildlife on this map are surprisingly sparse for this being the grasslands, and we also still have plenty of meat left in storage. This is just a safety measure should we run into trouble down the line. Our recent thruster construction spree has also cut deep into our component stockpile. Thankfully, there is a decent chunk of compacted machinery next to our landing site, alongside some silver ore slightly further to the north here. And with those resources coming in, we go all out on the next morning. Let's construct 2 more large thrusters to increase our gravship's range to the absolute maximum. At this point, the biggest challenge becomes keeping up with the demand for chem fuel. We are at this point also making use of Nelgraf's taming inspiration. There are horses on the map and those make for great caravan animals, and even though most of our travels are done in a slightly more technologically advanced way, it can never hurt to have some good old-fashioned backup. Nelgraf then successfully tames a mare that we will now name Smiley, as always a name randomly selected from one of my channel members and Patreon supporters in the naming rights tier and above. And conveniently, Brian is successful with a stallion just a few seconds later. This animal will now be named Dralf. As we then lead the two animals back to the ship, we are also informed that a local fox is hunting Happy Squid, one of our hens. Thankfully though, we have our panther Kevin to protect the chicken, and River is also quickly rushing over to help. Shortly after then, Kevin gets his wounds tended to, while Alex constructs the 6th and final large thruster, and a short while later then we have the full setup, 6 large and 4 small thrusters. The range of the Hisa Mark II now 136 tiles, and you can see here what that looks like. The white outer radius is barely visible anymore on the world map, because we need to zoom out so far to show it all. Now, like I said, at this point the main bottleneck becomes chem fuel, so we are going to chop down any and all trees growing in the vicinity. The wood can then be turned into fuel at the refinery. River and Nelgraf then complete the research of bionic replacements. Like I said though, without plasteel it will prove difficult to make them. In any case, up next, the gene processor sounds intriguing. We haven't really dabbled a lot with that aspect of the game yet, but we have some gene packs already in storage, so who knows, it might just be time. In the evening then, we are informed that our gravship is ready to be launched again, but we will need to wait until the next morning for the rice to fully mature, so in the meantime let's replace the remaining floor with steel tiles, and we can also slightly overhaul things in our workshop area once more, as we are now going to replace our small chem fuel tanks with large ones. They are slightly bigger, but overall more space efficient, and 2 of them are all we're ever going to need, as their total capacity exceeds any amount of chem fuel we could ever consume on one trip. Now, while the rice harvest is already underway, we also go buffalo hunting just to bring in a bit of extra meat. Our combat capabilities are still not exactly where I would like to see them, but for hunting a small herd like this one, they are definitely more than sufficient. The last few batches of rice are then harvested. A few moments later we cut the power, and at this point we can slowly start preparing for liftoff. Since we have so much spare meat now, Brent turns some of it into chem fuel too. Just in time, our researchers also unlock the gene processor, and we also take care of the last small vein of compacted machinery, just to have enough components on hand for the next leg of the adventure. A few hours later then, the last bits and pieces are hauled into the storage room of the Hisa Mark II, and in the very early morning hours we are once again ready for liftoff. Launch quality is now also vastly improved thanks to our 6 large thrusters. If all goes well, we only need to stay at the next map for barely 1 day. Now, as you can see, our chem fuel reserves give us quite a bit of space to operate in. However, we don't actually need all of that range, as our next destination is fairly close by. We are looking at a mechanoid relay harboring another gravcore in the Glowforest, a fungal biome that is shrouded in permanent darkness. This one unfortunately also comes with a distinct bit of pollution, but we're mostly just going here to grab the gravcore and leave again, so I don't think the pollution is going to be that much of a problem. And here we are in the Glowforest, another one of Odyssey's new biomes, and from a purely aesthetic standpoint, probably my favorite one. The map is shrouded in permanent darkness and there's only fungus growing, so for this part of the journey we'll leave the hydroponics basins on board. There are also a few new types of mushrooms that have been added with this biome. We'll talk more about them later. For the moment, we briefly want to take note of the several patches of polluted terrain on this map, including a vast toxic lake to the southeast here. In addition to that, the main reason we're here is the mechanoid relay. It is powered by a grav core and protected by several stabilizers, so if we want to extract the grav core, we first need to disable those. That can be done either by hacking or by destroying them. Either way, we'll need to fight some mechanoids in the process, as every one of the 3 stabilizers here has a small group guarding it. First of all though, we get things going and establish a power source, 2 wind turbines as always. This time however, we will have to exclusively rely on them. Even during the day, the light levels in this biome will not be enough to power solar panels. After switching a few pieces of gear around, we then also already approached the first stabilizer, this one protected by a legionary, a cyclops and a pikeman, and if we lock them all into melee combat, I think we should have little trouble here. So our 3 melee specialists, River, Alex and Saber, get 1 target each. We've got supporting fire from Nelgraf, Kyla, Brent and from Young Cat as well, and we've also got Brian standing by commanding a small army of animals, Panther Kevin, Rhino Ulfgar and Terra Kittens the Alpha Thrombo. So let's get to it and see how this goes. Alright, there we are, all 3 mechs are down, our injuries are mostly limited to cracks and bruises. We are also lucky that Alex did not take any damage whatsoever, and at this point we can set the relay to auto-hack. As you can see, Nelgraf immediately gets started. Now, completing the 500-point hack here will take a while. A much quicker way would be to simply destroy the relay stabilizer. Unfortunately though, that would trigger a mechanoid response, and a hefty one, so while hacking is slower, it is also much safer. As our fighters then recover, we take a closer look at the new boom shroom, a volatile mushroom that can be harvested for chem fuel. If it is cut down or otherwise destroyed, however, it will explode, so we want to be a little bit careful around these things. You can perhaps also see that we have been cutting down a lot of the timber shrooms in the vicinity. Their wood is now being turned into more chem fuel. We're also doing some construction here, putting up some outfit stands. These were added in the latest patch that accompanied the Odyssey expansion. Each one of them can hold 1 full outfit, and equipping it from the stand is much quicker than putting on all the pieces individually. Now at this point, we then also celebrate Furian's 10th birthday, and since this time he has made it all the way to growth tier 8, we can now choose 4 skill passions and 1 trait for him. And I went with these ones here, cooking, medical, animals and intellectual. Those strike me as skills very suitable to a pacifist high mate. For the trait then, the choice was really only between jogger and great memory. As a high mate, Furian is already beautiful, and ultimately, since he will most likely not participate in combat, the jogger trait did not strike me as quite as useful this time around. After all, living on the gravship, everything will be closely together. And so, this is what 10-year-old Furian currently looks like. Industrious and great memory make for a fantastic pair of traits, I think, and for a 10-year-old his skill set looks very respectable as well. In the meantime, Nelgraf here has been tirelessly hacking the first relay stabilizer. At this point, his work is done, the device has been shut down, and we only have 2 more left to go. Now, as you can see at the top of the screen, we also have a slight mood problem here. Nelgraf, River and Saber are not happy, and the one thing uniting them is the fact that they are psychite addicts, which is why Brian is now harvesting silocap mushrooms. Now, while these will not satisfy a psychoid addiction, they are a rather convenient and also not too risky mood booster. A plus 14 bonus to mood is nothing to scoff at, even if the cause of this bonus are hallucinations, which unfortunately lower consciousness and work speed. Now, all of this would have been avoidable, of course, had I kept better track of our psychoid inventory. Unfortunately, though, I didn't, and so we now have several pawns suffering from withdrawal. Nonetheless, I think we are ready to tackle the next relay. As you can see, Alex and Saber here are now equipping armor stored on one of these outfit stands, and a few seconds later they are both fully armed and ready. The plan here is pretty much identical to the one we executed earlier. An eclipse hitting the Glowforest also does not change things much for us. After all, it is dark here all the time. And so we get things going now. We've got 2 Scorchers and a Lancer to defeat. I forgot to mention that River is currently also on a food binge mental break, so because I don't want to see anyone get set on fire, we are melee locking the Scorchers first. This leaves the Lancer open for 1 ranged attack, but thankfully that doesn't deal any damage, and just a few seconds later it is locked into melee combat too. And there we go, that's group number 2 defeated. This time only Saber took injuries. All in all, clearing these relays is not too much of a challenge. Once again then, we have Nelgraf start the hacking process, because this time the relay is standing on polluted terrain. Let's not forget that Nelgraf is a waster though, so he is perfectly suited for the task. Apart from these fights and of course the resource gathering in the background, things remain pretty quiet. There is simply not that much to do here in the Glowforest, and we also need to keep ourselves ready for a swift escape. You'll see why in just a moment. Around midnight then, our pawns once again prepare for combat, but we are interrupted by a defoliator ship. Now, thankfully, as long as we don't disturb it, the 36 scythers protecting it won't wake up, and since we're not growing any crops or planning on staying here for long anyway, there is no reason to mess with this. Instead, we now prepare to tackle the last pair of mechanoids protecting the final relay here, just a lancer and a scyther this time, so this shouldn't be too difficult. Both Saber and River have also been left at home for that reason. Their psychoid withdrawal already gives them enough to deal with, I think. Alright, and that's it. With that, the third relay has been freed as well, and once again we'll have Nailgraf start hacking it. He is, by the way, currently locked out of hacking the second relay. I think I just forgot to show that earlier, but yes, this is something that can happen, which is why we now get the message at the top left of the screen: the second relay is now accessible again. First of all, though, Nailgraf completes his work on number 3, and we can also watch as the now 18-year-old River masters her intellectual skill by reaching skill level 20. A few moments later then, this final stabilizer here is deactivated. At this point then, the mechanoid relay begins to destabilize, and this is the point where we already want to prepare the Hisa Mark II for a swift escape. So we rope up our animals and bring them on board, and we also assemble a small party of colonists right next to the relay. And here's why. A few hours after beginning to destabilize, the relay crashes, and as soon as it does, we are warned that hostile mechanoids will soon arrive in response. At this point, we want to move quickly. In order to get at the gravcore inside of the relay, we first need to destroy it. Thankfully, that does not take too much time. At this point then, we reveal 165 graphite panels and the precious gravcore, and using the fastest pawns in our colony, we are now rushing all of that back to the ship. Everyone else is already on board and waiting for liftoff, and that is exactly what we're going to do as soon as our last pawn here reaches the entrance. The mechanoids are about to come in any second now. As a matter of fact, here they are. Landing in drop pods scattered all over the map, this is definitely not a fight we want to see through, so let's tell our pilots to schedule the gravship launch while the mechanoids are crashing down all around us. Now, I think we've done a great job gathering chem fuel during our brief stay here, and I also want to keep hunting these gravcores for just a little while longer. There's one down here at a frozen terraformer. In order to get there, we need to make at least one pit stop anyway, so how about we explore another unique landmark while we're at it? A sunny coastal atoll sounds like the perfect place for a short vacation. And there we are, we land at night and on the water. No surprise really, considering the lack of land. On the plus side, this leaves all the useful minerals nice and condensed, so I think we should be quickly done mining out this place before we then set out on the next leg of our journey. And so, as we lead our animals out to graze and prepare for what is hopefully going to be a few peaceful days at the beach, I think it's time that, at least for today, we say goodbye to the Hisa and its crew. Before we make the cuts, we have some more fan art this week. This piece depicting our genie Brent and the Alpha Thrumbo Terror Kittens, which, lest we forget, is bonded to him and will hopefully live to see the end of this series. If you have some artwork of your own that you want to send me, then the best way to do so is via email to pete@petecomplete.com. And with that, let's make the cut for today. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course also go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.